Shivaha
Soham Ham Sa Shivaha.
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Saha
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Sa.
Ham Sa Shiva Soham
Ham Sa Shiva Soham.
Soham Ham Sa Shivaha
Soham Ham Sa Shivaha.
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Saha
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Sa.
Ham Sa Shiva Soham
Ham Sa Shiva Soham.
Soham Ham Sa Shivaha
Soham Ham Sa Shivaha.
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Saha
Sa Shiva Soham Ham Sa.
Gururbrahma Gururvishnu Gurudeva Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The eye does not go there, nor speech, nor mind. We do not know that. We do not know how to instruct one about it. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vag gacchati, no manaha, na vidmo, na vijanimaha. Yathaitad anushishyat. We do not know how to teach that truth. Anya devtad viditat atho aviditat adhi. It is distinct from the known and above the unknown. We have heard it. Iti shushruma purvesham. We have heard it from whom? From our teachers before, from our gurus. Na ye nastad vyacha chakshire. And so stated the preceptors who taught us. So, when we say na vidmo na vijanimaha yathaitad anushishyat, we cannot instruct you about this. Why? What can we talk about? Think. We can only talk about that which has some attributes, that which has name and form, that which has some qualities, isn't it? Only names and forms has qualities. Anything without a name and form, is there anything to talk about? Can you talk about emptiness? How much can you talk about? That also you will talk. Emptiness means that all objects are missing. Objects have names and forms. But emptiness itself has got no name and form. Only name is there, form is not there. So when it says na vidma na vijanimaha, that it is beyond the known and above the unknown. Now what is known? Just think. Here everything that we know is as we said, it is name and form, but it is a substance. And what is a substance? Substance is something that which is having certain qualities. Huh? And when we are talking about reality, this reality is not a substance. Therefore, it is not known. It is beyond the known. We are talking about beyond the known. So just like this is a substance. This is wood. I can touch, feel, taste, think, ideate. It has a quality. It is hard. It can burn if I put fire to it. But the self, it is not like that. Substance can be cognized. Reality cannot be cognized. Why? Because it is cognition is only possible through the five senses, mind and intellect. Reality cannot be cognized. So, how does this? How does the guru then explain to a teacher, to the student, that the reality is so and so or such and such? When words cannot reach there, names, and you cannot put it in, you cannot explain through any qualities, you cannot explain it through any attributes, you cannot use any words, you cannot use anything to indicate the reality, then what do you do? So he has to use this type of language. Na vidmo na vijanimaha yathaitat anushishyat anyadeva tad viditadatho aviditadati. Here he says, see now how the observation takes place. So we have seen that anything known has a beginning and an end. Anything known can be cognized by the five senses, the mind and the intellect. And this reality is beyond all this because it is not a substance which can be cognized. That is from the known point of view. It is beyond the known. Now how it is beyond the unknown? How do you come to that conclusion it is beyond the unknown? What is the age or what is the name of my cousin brother? Okay, what is my age? Huh? What is my age? Or what is the name of my cousin brother?
Only you know.
Hmm?
Only you know.
No, I am asking you the answer.
How do we know?
How do we know? I don't know. So the conclusion is? Conclusion to that question is? I don't know. But you know that the mind doesn't know. Isn't it? It's a very subtle point. The moment I asked the question, your mind went looking into the memory banks that has Swamiji ever told his age? A glimpse. What did he say? When was his birthday? No file was coming out. You were clicking, my intellect was clicking everything, but no file was opening. And within a few seconds, it has scanned the whole memory bank of last, I don't know what your ages are, your whole lifetime. And it could not come up with a conclusive answer. Some stored memory, and therefore it made a statement, I don't know. Isn't it? So who doesn't know now? What does I don't know mean? That there is nothing to be known. Who is aware? Now be very careful, alert. Who is aware that the mind does not know? That is the reality. So before you knew the objects and you came to the conclusion the reality is beyond the objective experience of the mind. So mind cannot reach it. So it is beyond the known. Now we are talking about beyond the unknown. When I say I don't know, naturally that information is unknown to you. But who was aware of that unknown in your mind to make the conclusion and make a statement, I don't know? That is the reality. That is the truth, which is beyond the known as well as the unknown. We do the same exercise in meditation on Sundays. We chant Om. Right, today we just did from the body and the breath. Tomorrow we'll go further. Even if you observe the breath, why go to the mind? If you observe the breath, single pointedly, a point will come, suddenly the breath will stop. Suddenly the breath will start. Again it will stop. Again it will start. Again it will stop. You will start. Right now, as I'm speaking, energy is required. Continuously the pumping action is taking place. Have you ever seen someone snoring? There are gaps between the in-breath and the out-breath, isn't it? There are gaps there. There are gaps in your thinking. That's why you go into deep sleep. Somewhere along the way, whole day you are working, and thought after thought after thought after thought, you get tired of it, then you go, somehow the sleep comes. Because mind is tired of thinking, then you go to the bed. There also, the mind has given up the outside world, but the internal world is still bubbling. That appears as a dream, and then if it's tired of even dreaming, enough man, let me go to sleep. The mind is saying, I want rest, I want rejuvenation. And there, somewhere, as it is tired of thinking, just like if I ask you to sit straight, after some time you will get tired of sitting straight. Suddenly it will go like this, isn't it? Same way the mind also. Mind is alert. In the morning, by afternoon it goes this way, by evening it goes that way, and at night it goes flat. The thoughts, that is. And when it goes flat, there is no thought. As long as there is thought, you are not sleeping soundly. But you know, you had a deep sleep, isn't it? When you are fully refreshed and you had a night without any dreams, you know when you wake up in the morning, hey, I had a fantastic sleep. I was dead to the world. Why? Because there was no dream. There were no thoughts. Now tell me, who was available in the deep sleep when there was no thoughts to know that there were no thoughts? Because when you woke up, how will you come to know if there was no knower there? Isn't it? Knower has to be there. To who knows that there were no thoughts in the mind. And therefore, this knower, this principle, this self, it is beyond the known as well as the unknown. It is the knower of both, the known and the unknown. When this knower identifies with the known and the unknown, it is called the ego. When this ego disidentifies not just from the known but also from the unknown, then it is called the witness. When this witness becomes aware of itself without a thought or in spite of a thought, whichever way you may put it, it is called realization. It is called nirvana. So here the intellect, we are talking about that the self, the knower is beyond the known and the unknown. This knower knows both. It knows the known and it also knows the unknown. What? It knows the unknown? Yes, I just explained to you. You said, I don't know, so you know the unknown. Without this completion of process in your mind, meditation is not possible. If you do not accept that you are that principle, essentially, who is illuminating the unknown also, the emptiness also, the nothingness also, on the seat of meditation, the moment darkness comes, when does darkness come? When the thoughts subside, immediately fear will arise. And that fear will make you, prompt you into thinking something. It will prompt you to break your meditation. It will prompt you to hold on to something else by which this emptiness doesn't come. And this is where Vedanta comes in. That we have to accept that we are the illuminator of both the known as well as the unknown. And as much as I may say, or you may have read the books, you may have heard the tapes, you may have listened to some video, watched some videos, reading, watching, listening to a tape. In those times there were no cassettes available, but I can put that in. These are not the means of knowledge. What is the means of knowledge? By now you should know. What is the means of knowledge?
Self-inquiry.
Listening. Conscious listening. That is the means of knowledge. Reflecting on what you have heard and then contemplating on what you had listened to, and reflection is a process by which we remove the doubts and then confirm what we had heard, that I am that knower who is illuminating the knower and the known. Therefore, known is the names, the words, the language. The language cannot illuminate the knower. It is impossible, because how can the how can the reflected sun in a bucket illuminate the actual sun? How can the bulb expressing through this, the light expressing through this bulb illuminate the electricity? Is it possible? Electricity is infinite. It is a principle which is expressing through all the bulbs. But no bulb can ever illuminate the electricity. Similarly, this Guru principle, this divine principle, the self, it is expressing through all the thoughts. It is illuminating all the thoughts, but the thoughts cannot illuminate it. Thoughts can never illuminate the knower. It is an impossibility. Try. And you must try till you come to a point that you can't do any more. At that moment it will happen. See, intellect works this, that, right, wrong, in logic. But when it comes to this knower, logic doesn't work. Inference doesn't work. Then what works then? How do you come to know? Because when you are reading a book, what happens to your mind? you're trying to work out, isn't it? Working out will not help to know the reality. Then what will help? If inference doesn't work, logic doesn't work, only devotion doesn't work, then what will work? Intuition works. And that is why it is necessary that we get this knowledge from a live teacher. Because that teacher is telling you what his teacher taught, and he has realized what his teacher taught. How? Not by working it out from reading the books. By listening to it and recognizing that principle while he was listening or she was listening. Now that same thing, in the same manner, he goes and presents it to the people who come and ask or are interested. And again, the process is same. It is an intuitive, what do you call, not apprehension, no?
Yes, it could be.
Huh? Intuitive apprehension
Yes.
of that. Words are being used, but you are going beyond the words. What the words are indicating, you are trying to you are available to that. And what the words are indicating is not somewhere out there. It is closer than the closest to you. Because what the words are indicating is the real you, the Atman, the conscious principle within. And continuous, alert, wakefulness, awareness about that principle while speaking, while hearing, while eating, while walking. We are just going to use the word while listening, because listening is the first aspect of this spiritual sadhana. Continuously becoming aware. When we are listening to our teacher in the ashram, Upanishads, now when the Upanishads were taken, not in the beginning of the course. In the beginning, Ghatakash, Matakash, this pot, that pot, this wave, that water, all that is done, the karma, the devotion, everything is over. Now towards the end, last 7-8 months of the course, we did all the Upanishads. And initially, 1 or 2 Upanishads, we were still trying to work it out. And I was writing the notes. I still have the notes. And I was writing, I don't want to miss any word. While listening, while writing, my mind used to get transported. And suddenly, somewhere along the way, the writing will stop and I'm just sitting there. And it was not just my experience, many others also. And as the teacher is speaking, and he is going away, rambling on the truth, according to the thought flow in the Upanishad. And here we are sitting stunned, as if someone has hit us on the top of our head, absolutely still. We don't even want to move one single little this much, so that poise should not be broken. And continuously, as he is speaking, and what is he saying? That you are that. And he is shifting our attention to that knower. He is shifting our attention to that conscious principle. He is again and again, just like we teach a small child, hey, hold my finger, and we tell him, start walking, and suddenly we'll remove the finger and the child walks 3-4 steps. And then the moment he's falling, again he will catch the finger. Or a small child is walking and he says, come baby, come. And he gets excited and he starts walking towards and he knows that Yeah, if I fall, there is someone to catch me. You know, we do with the small children, we'll put them on the table. 1, 2, and that child is fearless. He doesn't know what falling means. He jumps with the trust that the father or the mother or whoever is there, they will catch. Isn't it? And the teacher was taking us through this. And we are ready to jump. And we are jumping. And in that jump, the tears are rolling, horripulations, the hair are standing erect, the back has gone straight, and how 2 hours used to go. The teacher used to finish the text and go away back to his room, and we are all still sitting there, not wanting to break that poise. Just now someone was telling me after the class, how the 2 hours went, we don't know. Everyone was just riveted to their place. This is what happens. And this is what will happen when we contemplate about the self. Only the topic of self can do this. So here, the teacher says, I cannot explain the truth which is lived through intuition, to you. When the theme for expression belongs to the plane of sense experience, we can explain it away in terms of its qualification, species, manifestation, etc. Neither the sense organs nor the organs of action can reach the supreme reality, the Atman. The indriyas, the sense organs can perceive. There must be an object that could be perceived and that can be distinguished by the sense organs. But just like, for example, I see my body, isn't it? I see you. You are a particular form. I know I am other than you, isn't it? Then I come to myself. I see my body. Then I know. The rule is the seer and the seen can never be the same. If I am seeing you, you are the seen, I am the seer. We are not the same. We are two separate. Seer has to be other than the seen. The knower has to be other than the known. I know that this body is here. Naturally, the knower who's saying, I know that the body is here, or I am the seer, who is seeing the body as the seen, the seer has to be separate to the seen, isn't it? The rule must continue. But why do we consider ourselves to be the body then? Why here one rule and then here one rule? If with everything outside this body I say I am the seer and everything is seen, but you are seeing your body also. The seer has to be other than the seen equal to body, your body. You are also observing that you are breathing. That means the knower of breath within you is separate to the breath, isn't it? You also know that emotions come and go. Sometimes anger, sometimes jealousy, sometimes competition, sometimes comparison, sometimes love, sometimes compassion. All these emotions come and go, come and go, come and go. You are aware of it. You know that these emotions are coming and going. Because no emotion lasts permanently. Then the knower of these emotions has to be someone separate. Then why do you think that you are an emotional person? You are an angry person? That you are a jealous person? That you are a loving person? Because you got identified with that particular emotion. Your attention is on that emotion. Your attention is not on the one who is illuminating that emotion. Then when it comes to the thoughts, the same thing. Thoughts and ideas and concepts. And we define ourselves only by the thoughts, ideas, and concepts. I am a man, I am living in this world, I am a product of my parents, I am a graduate, I am a photographer, I am a millionaire, I am a teacher, I am a student, and story goes on and on and on and on. All concepts in our mind. But concepts are also changing continuously. One moment I am a father, next moment I am a son. Next moment I am a teacher, next moment I am a student, next moment I am a driver, next moment I am a cook, next moment I am a sleeper, next moment I am a waker, next moment I am a dreamer. All personalities are coming and going. All the thoughts are coming and going. No thought, no concept, no idea in our mind lasts for more than a few seconds. And you know that. When you reflect upon it, you know. And then you say, oh, sorry, I think my attachment to my idea brought about that reaction towards you. I'm sorry, forgive me. And then you move on. So who is that knower? Who knows? Who is illuminating those thoughts? Who is illuminating those concepts? Who is illuminating those ideas within your intellect? Who is that? These ideas, thoughts, concepts can never illuminate the knower of the ideas, thoughts and concepts. No thoughts can ever come to know the knower. Because the fact is, all the thoughts are able to express because of the illumination by the knower. See, for example, all the objects are there in this world, isn't it? Can you see them when the night is there? No moon, no stars. Can you see anything out there? Can you see? No, there is a homogeneous mass of blackness, isn't it? So how do you see objects? Photographer. How do you see objects?
Put some light in there.
Correct. When light gets reflected on the object becomes perceived, isn't it? And what is an object, did we say? Which has a beginning and an end. Now you see, the objects out there, the object called the body, who is illuminating? The light is getting reflected, isn't it? Light is getting reflected, therefore you are able to see the body. Now this is the outside light for a gross object. But you also know about your emotions, you also know about your thoughts. What is that light which is illuminating those thoughts, because of which you know that there are thoughts in your mind? It's a very subtle point. That light you are. That knower you are.
I've often wondered that. I used to be able to say, how can I see the thought in the head? What's producing the light? What is it?
Now one more point. To get to this point, if you want to come to this point where you recognize you are that source of light, that knower is that source of light, you have to close your senses. Because while my eyes are open, ears are open, nose is open, mouth is open, tongue is busy, so many stimuli are coming and I am not able to catch that light. Right now I am seeing all of you. Instead of saying that even the light that is illuminating you, the sunlight, is because I have given the reality, I am illuminating the sun. That thought doesn't appear intuitively within me, isn't it? But when I say, talk about it, you will say, yes, 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 that sounds correct. But it will not stay for too long. Why? Too much distraction for the senses. Too much distraction. But on the seat of meditation, when the outside distraction has been taken care of, is curtailed, and the thought flow starts becoming slower, then you are able to catch that, hey, then when this question you put, who is illuminating these thoughts now? And that's what we practice in the morning meditation, that's what we did today. Come to your body form, who is observing the body? Then go back to the one who is witnessing the body. Then observe the breath, and when your attention is stabilized on the breath, then shift the attention from the breath to the witnessing principle. And why is it possible that you are able to go back to the witnessing principle who is observing the breath? Because there are no distractions at that moment. Why are you at this moment able to sit for 1 or 2 hours listening to the Upanishad? Because there are no distractions for you. You are not allowing the mind to listen and get carried away by the kookaburra or by the gongs that go on there or by all other sounds that are, we are listening to them but we are not giving them attention, isn't it? The rumbling sound in the stomach. And also there are many other thoughts wanting your attention. While you are listening to me, things are popping up. But you just keep, no, I want to just concentrate on this. It's a conscious thing that you are doing. So even, see, all the tools that we require to come to ourselves and know ourselves, we are already practicing, but they have to be put in the right direction, that's all. So just what you are practicing here right now, now that I have shown you that you are not giving attention to anything, you are focused, same thing you have to do on the seat of meditation also. Don't get distracted by anything, let the sounds come or not come, let the breath be there or not there. Let the thoughts be there or not there. Don't be distracted. But slowly we build the strength to not be disturbed by the world, then not be disturbed by the body, then not be disturbed by the breath, then not be disturbed by the thoughts. When we are not disturbed by the thoughts, then we are alone able to observe the thoughts. Observing of thought means you come to that I am illuminating the thoughts. And then, if you are illuminating the thoughts without any energy behind it, without any, without any attachment, automatically the thought flow starts subsiding, becomes less and less and less and less. But you have to maintain that illumination, that I am the one who is illuminating the thoughts. And when the thoughts subside, the light continues to be. Only there is nothing to illuminate there. Just like right now I am illuminating you. You are there. Or this bulb is illuminating all of us. Why? Because it is reflecting upon these objects called beings. But we all go out of the room. Will anything happen to the light? The light continues to be. Same thing is this conscious light. Its job is only to illuminate. When any object comes into within its ambit, the light gets reflected and we cognize that as an object of experience. And when that object goes away, still the light continues to be. Then then it illuminates that there is no object. So known and unknown. Known is the objects, unknown is the absence of objects. Tomorrow morning we will do that. That witnessing conscious is that principle which illumines both the presence of Om and the absence of Om. We have done that few times in our meditation. Presence of Om. Om is what? Just a thought in our mind. So it is illuminating that thought Om, and between the two Oms there is a gap. So it is illuminating that there is no Om. So it is illuminating the nothingness or that there is nothing. But because there is something and because there is nothing, nothing happens to this illuminating principle. It continues to be the same. And that you are. Recognition of this principle is realization. And recognition of this principle not through thought. Now don't start thinking, oh, then I have to give up thought. No, you do the process where of its own accord the thoughts vanish. They are tired of appearing. Why? How does a thought continue to appear in the mind? How does the thought continue to appear in the mind? By paying attention to it, correct? Whenever we give value, whenever we give attention, oh, what a wonderful thought. Thank you. And it grabs you. And before you know, you have gone into a reverie. You are thinking of what could have been. One girl was there. She's now elderly lady. And she used to watch Hindi movies. And in the Hindi movies, there used to be one hero, Devanand. I don't know if you know Devanand. Devanand. In the old movies. Huh?
Is that the name of the actor?
Actor.
No, I don't.
No. She used to enjoy watching Devanand, and nice movies, nice songs he used to sing and everything. And she used to think, I want to get married to a guy who is like Devanand. And then she got married to someone else. Because Devanand is only one of his kind. You can't get another duplicate Devanand. And then she told me the story. So one day I told her, Amma, we were seeing one movie guide we were watching. So I said, Amma, Devanand, and she knew what I was indicating to her. She said, and suddenly the movie was going on and she was lost. And then she said, hey, what happened in the movie? I said, where were you? Were you thinking what could have been in the last 30 years? If I was with Devanand? See? All these kids, they have Michael Jackson on their wall, or Aishwarya Rai on their wall, or Amitabh Bachchan on the wall. They have Sylvester Stallone on the wall. Nowadays, those days are gone of Sylvester Stallone. Nowadays, who's there? Matt Damon.
That's gone too now.
That's gone to, who's the present one? And then they feel, how would it have been? You think about that person, you think about some incidents from the past, and suddenly it sucks you into that moment. And you lose the present moment. So neither you are here, nor you are there, because you can never go into the past. And you have lost the present moment also. And suddenly you say, hey, what happened to my life? Where has it gone? How come I don't feel I have achieved anything in life? So thought gets energy, thought gets movement, thought gets velocity only when this conscious principle becomes attached to it or gives value to it. If it remains equanimous, just illuminating, not interested in it, the thought says, okay, I'll go and seek somewhere else where I can get some attention. But where will it go? Again he tries. He goes around somewhere into the nothingness and again pops up. Maybe this time he'll give. This situation is different. Now the lecture is not going on. And few times he tries, and sometimes you catch, sometimes you're aware, sometimes you catch, sometimes you're aware. But if this knowledge is there, you know that not to give attention or value to this thought. Eventually what happens? Thought says, I don't get any attention here. And he stops appearing. This is what happens every night when you go to sleep. The only thing is you are not aware that time. A thought comes, oh, I have to iron my clothes because I have to go to India or I have to go to the retreat. Literally, this is a live example. And I was tired, exhausted, and I thought, no, I have to iron so many clothes for India also, for here also. And I know, man. No, I don't want to do it. No, but the thought is coming, but tomorrow you don't have time. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And oh, you will forget what you have to do. You must write a list of what you have to do. My body is I'll do it tomorrow. No, you have to do it now because you know you will not remember everything tomorrow. Make a list now what all you have to do. Okay, I'll write it in the bed. So I put my the reading lamp on, and I took a piece of paper and I was lying down and I was writing. I knew I was not going to do it. I was tricking my mind because the mind was tired of thinking. Why? Because the attention of the mind wants to go to rest. It has thought enough in that particular scenario. In meditation, the mind wants to go to rest because it is not getting any attention. In sleep, that majority of the part of mind wants to go to rest. Some part of the mind wants to keep thinking because out of habit, that is its habit. So this way, the teacher says, न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाक् गच्छति नो मनः न विद्मो न विजानीमः यथैतदनुशिष्यात् अन्यदेव तद्विदितात् अधो अविदितादधि इति शुश्रुम पूर्वेषाम्. This is what I have heard from my teachers. Knowledge is not passed from book to book. If you go to India, it is a joke of education there. One government comes, now right, till a few months ago, it was a coalition between a democratic party which is ruled, or most of its parliament members are either criminals or murderers, ruling the country. And the other half, the coalition, was communist. So they brought all the education books. The board is called NCRT, National Education and Research and Training Center. They changed all the book according to their philosophy. Imagine a murderous philosophy, what it will be. Imagine a communist philosophy, what it will be. They don't want to recognize Mahatma Gandhi was a great person. Any mention of any god or any religion has to be out of the book. By communism. Now they have gone. Communist is out of the power now. They are not in coalition because the Congress, the Prime Minister belongs to the Congress committee. He found some other willing partners to form the government. So it's only no communism now. So now they're changing the books again. Then BJP will come. That's the other party which is in the opposition. They are highly nationalistic and very, very religion oriented. So they will change again. No, Ramchandra ji was there. No, Sita was there. No, Jesus was there. Everything they will change again. Funny. If this is how education is transferred, then that is not education. That is not true education. Everything for last 200-300 years, what we know as science, is continuously changing, isn't it? Continuously changing. The theories are continuously being re-evaluated and are being presented to us. And why even that? What you are studying today is already obsolete. The true, the present day knowledge is not being taught in the schools. But in our Gurukul system, in our Upanishads, which were transferred from the teacher to the disciple only. It was not free for all. Only from teacher to disciple. This knowledge was not something which will change with time. It is not a knowledge which will, oh, it sounds interesting and it will become uninteresting afterwards. It is permanent. Whether people accept it or don't accept it, because Upanishads, the knowledge of the truth doesn't require what you call confirmation by any human being. It is existing independently in its own right. And that you are. Don't forget. Don't ask for any confirmation from anyone as regards to your own self. As much as I may say, no, you are not a woman. Will you accept? How ridiculous it is, isn't it? Then when I say, no, you are not the body. No, no, Swamiji, I feel hungry. Why that? No, you are not the mind, you are not the thoughts. That we are not ready to accept. Why? See? So this knowledge in the Upanishads, it is permanent. It has never changed from the beginning of time until this creation continues. The knowledge of the Upanishads, which is the property of all conscious beings. It is not just only for the Hindu people. It is a universal knowledge. It is that knowledge which cannot be denied, which cannot be negated, which cannot be reduced, which cannot be increased. It is eternal. And this is, the teacher is saying, and I cannot express it because I can only explain to you because these words were told to me by my teacher. So I am just, transporting those words to you, and you make what you make of it. That's all I can say. Because their logic doesn't work, their intuition works. When I just use these words, if you think about all this, that is a fantastic idea, you have lost the plot. If at that time, intuitively say, oh, that's me he's talking about, then maybe we are getting somewhere. And in this manner, Ye nastad vyachachakshire, and he says, so stated, so the teachers, so the Guru Parampara, they have taught us this. And therefore, here he says, absolute truth is not available for us through direct perception of it with the sense organs, mind or intellect, nor can we deduce or infer truth. No proof is available in this wondrous field of self-inquiry. The only proof is agama, the traditional knowledge, repeated, endorsed and given out to their respective disciples by a long and unbroken chain of teachers. So whom do we belong to? That is where I feel I am blessed. I belong to the Sringeri Parampara. So my teacher is Swami Anubhavananda. Anubhavananda's teacher was Swami Chinmayananda. Chinmayananda's teacher was Shivananda. Shivananda's teacher was Shankaracharya of Sringeri. Shankaracharya of Sringeri comes from the lineage of Adi Shankaracharya. That was 1800 years ago. And that's the lineage. So that truth has been expounded again and again by the teacher to their disciple, and every disciple has recognized that truth. Over so many, because we have this lineage goes back 1800 years. And so it cannot be wrong, this knowledge. He was telling me something during breakfast that now they had discovered space to be this, that space to be creation to be this, and but all those theories are continuously changing. But this theory, if you call it a theory, it is an unchanging theory. For 1800 years, it has stood the test of time. And what is it talking about? It is saying that you are that reality, which is beyond the known and the unknown. In fact, you are the illuminator of the known and the unknown.
Can I ask you a question? So in your everyday life, how do you keep that awareness of yourself? Because when you're fully present in what you're doing, it's also easy to get kind of...
It is not a question of how. Because how implies a process, isn't it?
No.
Yes.
Maybe a
How
step.
do you lift a book?
No, but what I
You
mean is...
move your hands out, you catch the book and you lift it. So
No,
there
but-
is an action involved.
No, but for example, here, I've got time to, not think and feel more at home in myself. When I go back to Melbourne, all these things I'm doing, which are
True.
really exciting, it's so easy to get caught up in it and then to forget or to kind of slip out of that space that you need.
Correct,
to be
correct,
yourself,
correct.
So how do you
But by
combine both?
spending time every day for half an hour, 45 minutes with yourself, connecting with yourself
Meditation.
in meditation. It must become like every morning you take bath, every morning you brush your teeth in the morning as well as before going to sleep. Every day you don't forget your meals. That much discipline you should be about spending half an hour, 45 minutes with yourself on a daily basis.
And then that carries on.
And that will slowly the momentum will build up. So once you have touched yourself, then the whole day goes in the bliss of that experience of yourself. In the olden times, if you remember, the cities were built around churches, isn't it? You see the German cities, you see the Tiruvannamalai we went, the temple was in the middle and the whole city came around. Madurai, the temple is in the middle, city around. All the cities are like that of the olden times. The temple, the divine, the sanctum sanctorium was the center of the universe of that city. And life revolved. Even today you will see people get up in the morning, take shower, the first thing they do before they do anything, they'll go to the temple, quickly offer their prayers and then come back and start doing everything. Every evening they come back, they again wash their feet, take a shower, go to the temple and then come back and take the food and tea, coffee, whatever. So that's a gross expression that life is revolving around the divinity in the sanctum sanctorium. Now, don't just live at the outside level. Transfer that experience within. Every day, spend time, as I said, half an hour with yourself. You are coming to the sanctum sanctorium within because you are the knower. Knower is not outside. The illuminating principle is not outside. It is you. As you. Be with it. And when you have done that, then go and do whatever automatically. Then whatever has to happen will happen.
And that.
And automatically a sense of calm, a sense of harmony, a sense of acceptance that whatever is happening is just right for the way the life has to go. Because the goal is not what you want to achieve there. The goal is that I must not forget that I am this conscious principle throughout my life. That is the goal of life. Now, that can express what ideas come, what business ideas come, whatever has to happen there. You will do to the best of your ability without forgetting you are the conscious principle, isn't it?
And so you can say that discipline of meditation practice
Ab-
is what also helps you to say, okay, now I step out of what I'm doing now and just reconnect to myself.
But yes, initially it seems that I have to sit in meditation to connect with myself. But as you keep practicing, a point will come where 24 hours a day you will be aware, in spite of all the activities going on. Right now, just like for example, you are continuously listening to me for last 1 hour. Your eyes are seeing, your ears are hearing so many different sounds, but your attention is on the self because that is being told to you again and again. And sometimes when I go to a different topic, still your attention is with the self itself, isn't it? That will be experience of everyone now. Same thing you have to do out there also when you go out into the world. And the momentum builds up. But for that moment to build up, you have to spend some time with yourself. For whatever, if I want to start a business, I just can't start, I start a business, I put everything in and okay, let it run by itself. No, I have to put some time there for the business to be successful. If I'm wanting to learn Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, that particular verse, the first time I heard, I could not remember. Everyone else is chanting around me. I have to put effort again and again, keep remembering, keep trying to by heart, keep repeating. And then one day, suddenly it was natural. Now I never forget it. Same way, when we keep thinking about satsang is that. Be in satsang with yourself every day, at least for half an hour. And try to do it in the morning, before you begin the activity of the day. Either you just brush your teeth and then sit down, or just the moment you get up, wherever on the bed, just sit. That's the best time, straight away. But if you feel that my mouth is dirty and the pressure is there, do all that thing and then come and sit down. Before all the humdrum of life begins. You were saying something?
Yes, after you gave us a meditation some time ago, observing the sounds, but let each one remind you that it's through consciousness that you are able to hear the sounds. And I found during the day, that's helped me doing that meditation as well as the other one.
Yes.
Every so often, it's because of consciousness that I'm able to drive the car. And even driving, it doesn't detract from the concentration. It can be there, that thought can be there, even while you're doing something.
Exactly.
In fact, it enhances it. Yes.
For that, it was possible for you to do that since you were born, or since you started thinking.
Yes,
But it took you some time to be reminded, to be exposed to satsang, everything that you had done till this point or till that happened to you, that it became a norm in your life. Now you don't have to put special effort, isn't it?
It doesn't take away from the concentration of what you were doing, even if it's something you need a lot of concentration. In fact, seems to give you more power for it.
See, there was an example in the Panchadashi, a very gross example, but a girl is there married to a guy and having kids. And the guy goes to work, the children go to school. What does this idle mind do? So she goes for shopping somewhere and she finds that one man was looking at her. And how come this guy is looking? Next day she goes, again this fellow is giving her attention. After 2-3 times, a handsome fellow. After 2-3 times, she also gives a smile. Okay, and goes on. After some time, a few days pass, that man, instead of standing and watching her, he comes close to her and he starts buying the vegetables which she is buying. And while doing that, she goes to pick up a potato and he puts his hand on her hand. Current. And then she doesn't move her hand, he doesn't move his hand. No words are spoken. And just to show that she's annoyed, and then she then goes back home. Now, after that feeling, next day she goes, again she puts hand, he again puts hand. And this goes on for some time. Now she is thinking that when she's doing cooking, when she's cleaning, when she's taking care of the kids, when she's going to pick up the kids, when she's making tea for her husband, all the chores in her at home she's doing. But all the time her attention is on being in the arms of the beloved. When this touch will convert into an embrace. But because she is thinking about that beloved whom she has fallen in love, she is imagining, it has not happened yet, but continuously her thoughts are about that. But because her thoughts are about that person, her performance at home is not becoming less. Why? Because if performance becomes less, everyone will start suspecting. Then she will be in a bigger trouble. So she continues to perform even better, but all the time secretly harboring the thoughts of the beloved. This is exact. Wait. This is exactly what we have to do by falling in love with the beloved self. The self is all potential, all energy. You believe it or not, the more you come closer to the self, more perfection will be expressed outside. That is just one example. I told you it was a gross example. But it brings home the point that they are trying to make. That because you are coming to the self or becoming aware of the divine that you are, it does not mean that you become an unproductive person in life. Krishna was continuously aware of himself, and the most perfect person to be born on this planet. He was a best father. I was giving this example. He was the best son, the best father, the best husband, the best diplomat, the best warrior, the best friend, the best enemy. Everything, whatever role Krishna has played in his life, he has excelled in it. And that excellence expressed only because he was not attached to any role that he played. We believe that when we get attached, only then excellence will come through. Inverse is true. The more you are detached, the more excellence will. But detachment does not mean thinking about nothing. Detachment from the world, but attachment to the self. Remain aware of the self. From there, then this, the gush of infinite energy and potential flows through you. But this has to, and this has been happening in your life. You have to just recognize it. And once you recognize it, you will find, instead of going to various seminars, going to various courses, wanting to increase your knowledge, once you get convinced, you will spend more and more time with yourself. That is the source from where everything happens. And you become a force to reckon with in this life by anyone. But that's the only way, by coming to the self. So with this, the fourth verse begins. So this knowledge about the self, which cannot be taught, which cannot be read, which cannot be understood, which cannot be cognized through the senses, it can only be communicated through the Guru Shishya Parampara, that is the teacher and disciple dialogue, and through the scriptures. Because scriptures also you take and you read, it will be very difficult. Nowadays we find the scriptures to be in this book format. Originally they used to be from the mouth of the teacher to the ear of the student. That was the way of communication. Now the next verse comes. Yadvachanabhyuditam yena vagabhyudyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. What's the time?
1:20.
We'll take this verse in the next class.
Wow, 20 past 1.
Here it says, what speech cannot reveal, but what reveals the speech. Know that alone as Brahman, and not this that people worship here. A great wealth of knowledge in that particular verse. We'll see that in the next class, which will be after lunch at 3:30 p.m. Enough time? 3:30, 2 hours, 10 minutes. No, more than that. 3 hours, 2 hours, 40 minutes. So you can have some rest also. And do rest. Otherwise you will go to sleep at night. Do rest for half an hour. Lie down because your back will start aching by the evening.